good afternoon, everybody. Our plan is to present the case. We'll hear what Anita has to tell about the history part. Let her complete in a slow manner. You listen to the history. You let her finish the history without interruption. Then we'll go back again to the history, followed by general examination, cardiovascular examination. I don't know whether we'll be able to finish in 1 hour time. It may take a little more. And even if you can't finish, we'll do the second session some other time. Okay, let us hear what the history part from Anita.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon and welcome to my case presentation. I'm presenting the case of Ramzan Ali, 3-year, 6-month-old child, boy, presenting from Nallalam, Kozhikode, and his informant was his mother and history was reliable. My child is an antenatally diagnosed heart disease and now my child came for follow-up. And because the history is significant from the antenatal period, I'm starting from the antenatal history. My child is a 4th child of a non-consanguineous parentage. The antenatal history, trimester 1, pregnancy was detected after urine pregnancy test after missing her period, and she was on regular antenatal checkup. There is no history of fever or rash, no history of radiation or drug exposure. Second trimester, she was started on iron and folic acid tablets. There was no history of diabetes or hypertension. USG ultrasound was taken and it was informed to be normal. In 3rd trimester, she was detected to have hypertension and diabetes at 7th month. And the mother was already having hypertension and diabetes in her previous 2 pregnancies as well. And she was started on insulin and antihypertensive drugs. There were 2 antihypertensive drugs. At 7th month, USG scan revealed that the baby had growth restriction and regular scans were advised. Repeat scan after 1 month, that is at 8 months, showed there was some abnormality with Doppler parameters. Hence, she was advised to go to a higher center for emergency delivery. An induction of labor was done following the USG, which showed abnormal Doppler at 8 months, and baby was born as a preterm vaginal delivery with a birth weight of 1,600 grams. So this is a low birth weight. Baby did not cry soon after birth, required positive pressure ventilation for a short duration of time. Exact time mother does not recall. And baby was transferred immediately to NICU. Mother recalls that the reason for transferring was persisting bluish discoloration and also there was history of low birth weight. Baby was on oxygen support. There was no invasive ventilation or positive pressure ventilation required in NICU, but there was cyanosis. There was no breathing difficulty or chest in drawing noticed by the mother. No abnormal sensorium or seizures, no hypoglycemia or hypothermia. Baby was kept on IV fluids for the first 2 days. Oral feeds were not given, but colostrum was given. Baby was started on express breast milk only on 3rd day, where the oxygen administration continued. Baby was in NICU for a total of 12 days. In view of this persisting bluish discoloration of skin, heart disease was suspected and echocardiography was done, and a heart disease was found out. It was informed to the parents that an emergency procedure had to be done, and the baby was also, following the echocardiogram, was started on a continuous IV infusion of a particular drug. And the baby was transferred from this hospital to another tertiary care hospital via Hridyam program, maintaining the above mentioned IV infusion. And at the second hospital, an intervention was done. A catheter intervention through thigh veins was done at around 21 days of life. Post procedure, baby was in ICU, uneventful stay, out of ventilator by day 2, and feeds were started on day 5. Saturation, as recalled by the parents, were about 72%. Thereafter, they were advised routine follow-up from the cardiothoracic surgery department from the tertiary hospital. Following this first intervention, the baby started gaining weight, though cyanosis was present. There is no history of cyanotic spell, no history of suck cycle, head sweating. There was good sucking at breast. Baby was put on aspirin drug after the procedure. The follow-up continued, and at 5 months during the follow-up, it was noticed that the baby saturation was less than 60%. Soon afterwards, in the same done, another surgery was advised and done. This time, the surgery was an open surgery with a midline scar. Post-operatively, baby was ventilated for 1 day. No post-operative complication. Breastfeeding initiated after 3 days. After this surgery, aspirin was continued and iron drops were also added. Following this surgery, mother recalls that the saturation had improved. Again, the baby was kept under follow from the same hospital, and initially 2 weekly and later 1 month, monthly review was advised. From the age of 1 year onwards, the parents have noticed that the child has fast breathing on running, on climbing stairs. There is no history of cyanotic spells, no history of squatting episodes or squatting equivalents like crossing the legs or sitting on the chair. There is no history of deepening cyanosis noted after running or climbing stairs. But again, the child is kept inside the house and is forbidden to play outside. There was one episode of cough and high-grade fever at the age of 1.5 years that required admission to hospital. No ICU admission required. Took IV antibiotics for 5 days. There was no new drug added on discharge. There is no prolonged hospital stay. The child recovered and no further child recovered. At 2 years of age, again admitted with fever for 2 days and irritability. There were no respiratory symptoms, there was no seizures, there was no abnormal sensorium other than the irritability. On evaluation, there was high hemoglobin detected, and phlebotomy and partial exchange was done once. Thereafter, the irritability decreased. There was no focal neurologic deficits, there were no seizures, headache, or vomiting. An echocardiogram was repeated during this episode, and it was said to be normal, and no signs of infections in the echocardiogram was informed. Now, at the age of 3.5 years, the child is again on routine follow-up under the Hridyam scheme. He does his routine activities. There is no spell. There is no history of failure. There is no feeding difficulty. The child continues to gain weight, and development is slowly attaining. Immunization history. The child is fully immunized for age. No adverse effects following immunization. Optional vaccines, PCV were taken. BCG scar seen. Development history. There is development history. The child has gross motor delay, which corresponds to the age of 2 years. Fine motor delay corresponds to 1.5 years. Language, it corresponds to 3 years. And social and adaptive is age appropriate according to the history. Dietary history. Breastfeeding along with formula feeds were started in the newborn period and breastfed till the age of 2 years. There is a calorie gap of 210 and protein gap of 2.5. Decreased consumption of iron-rich foods and decreased consumption of meat and fish and vegetables in the history. Family history is significant with two intrauterine demise at the age of 7 months due to and mother also had history of hypertension during the pregnancy. Another live child, age 21 years, who is normal. No history of cardiac disease in the family. No history of any surgeries done in the family. Socioeconomic, father does painting jobs, studied up to 10th standard. Mother is a homemaker. She also has studied up to 10th standard. Belongs to upper lower class according to modified Kuppuswamy classification and included under the Hridyam scheme, and the surgery and other procedures have been done under the Hridyam scheme.
Okay, you finished, Anita?
Yes, sir. History is finished.
Very well presented history. And the basic idea of today's presentation by a pediatrician, we have been hearing of our first 5 sessions, cardiology, experts in cardiology. So purpose of this case is the role of a pediatrician is to be stressed. You all know the successful history of Hridyam. The main target, our aim is to bring down the infant mortality, out of which congenital heart disease contributes a lot. It's a very successful program. So what is the role of a pediatrician? The role of a pediatrician is, first thing, to diagnose early and send in a safer manner where the intervention can be done. The second part, after the surgery or the intervention, the follow-up. So this is one classical case where the role of pediatrician is there. The intervention was done in the right time referral was happened, intervention was done, and after the intervention, there is some problem where the intervention was not completely working. So why, what happened? But it's not, that is definitely not a full correction. Something was still yet to be remaining, whether there was incomplete correction or it was not a correctable, some palliative thing was done. We don't know. Actually, this is a case we didn't discuss together. Anita and myself didn't discuss because we don't matter much about the diagnosis part. So how to approach this case and the pediatric aspect, that's all what we have. In a case like this is, in summary, there's a family history of some malformations, as you mentioned. There was something which you mentioned, 2 siblings in about abortion in the first trimester, 2 cases.
So no, sir. At 7 months, it was an intrauterine demise at 7 months of gestation. Both
7 months.
had uncontrolled hypertension.
Okay, not in the first trimester. There was no consanguinity.
No, non-consanguineous and no first trimester abortion.
This is the only surviving child?
No, sir. There are one more kid who is 21 years and doing normally.
Okay. So in between there was 2 loss of fetal. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So in a case like this, when we present in a cardiological forum, there is possibility that this can be a cardiac problem. So in another situation, when a periphery pediatrician is encountering a problem coming to you, your first role, the first responsibility to decide, am I dealing with a cardiac problem? So that is one thing. A case coming with something looking like a cardiac event is to be differentiated. That task is taken away from us now in this Hridyam presentation. So whatever be the complaint, a lot of other entities to be considered, like syncope can be seizure phenomenon, some other condition also. So any of these things here, that task is not there. So what is the overall history? It is a preterm baby, low birth weight preterm baby. Antenatal history, nothing is there. Nothing's contributory. Antenatal first trimester, second trimester, except for the uncontrolled diabetes part. 38 weeks, low birth weight. A patient found to be dyspneic, naturally will be considering a respiratory first. But the first thing, are we dealing with a cardiac problem was suspected by the pediatrician in the neonatal nursery because there was out of proportion bluish discoloration. There was not much of distress, but cyanosis was there. So that is the first important step in a case, any situation where you encounter a bluish discoloration. First question, is this fluid discoloration respiratory or cardiac? So that is here also the pediatrician noticed that the cyanosis was there out of proportion to the dyspnea. So he was definitely justified to consider the possibility of a cardiac problem. The next important point which we are interested is the patient was sent for intervention on the 12th. That is important. That's a clue for the possibility of this entities. So the cyanosis part was not due to respiratory condition. It's likely to be cardiac because this stress, it was out of proportion to it. The next question, this condition is presenting in the newborn period with fluid discoloration. So what are the usual conditions of a cardiac problem presenting with the fluid discoloration in the first few days? All of us know all the decreased flow state situation, some of the increased flow state situation, any of this can present in the newborn period, out of which commonest is the great vessel, transposition of great vessels. And out of these decreased flow states also, few of them can present in the newborn period, like very severe pilocytology, other situations, decreased flow state with a critical stenosis situation also can present. These are all the possibilities. But a patient presenting in the newborn period with that sort of a situation will all be considered the ductus dependent situations, out of which commonest is the transposition of great vessels. Here, usually that will happen when these ductus closes. So that is somewhere between first day, just hours itself up to maybe 48 hours. During that period, you anticipate that possibility. But it didn't happen here, and the child got worsened on the 12th day and was referred. That is a clue. So the timing of the referral, timing of the worsening is one important clue for your newborn cardiac diagnosis. When did the child's problem occur? At birth, normal, no respiratory problem. First few hours went well, then all on a sudden deteriorating, either in the form of a ductus dependent systemic shock situation or severe cyanosis, ductus dependence. Either of these things occur somewhere around in the early period. My internet connection is a little weak. I don't know whether you can hear it. Anyway, that period is the time when ductus dependent situations occur, systemic or pulmonary. In this case, it was presented with cyanosis. Ductus dependent pulmonary situations are the conditions, but that didn't happen. It went on to the 12th day. Usually, in any of the critical situation, critical stenotic situation, or an abnormal connection to the arteries, it will not go up to that period. That means it can occur, there is some chance of missing. So what are the possibilities remaining where child survives beyond that period up to 12 days? Maybe there is a connection. So it's a transposition of great vessel without communication definitely is not possible. There must be a communication like significant ASD or VSD. And even when the PDA is closing, sometimes that's a possibility. Or it can be a critical stenotic situations gradually over time worsening. So the classical condition of a TGA alone without communication is very unlikely. So other situation, definitely the child needed an intervention on the 12th day. Referral cyanosis was happening and worsening. So other possibilities are more likely compared to the possibility of the commonest of the TGA situation. So TGA with the communication is possible, or a critical stenotic situation is possible. So anyway, patient was referred to a higher center with a continuing infusion, most probably continuing infusion. Ductus patency was maintained we try to be maintained. So whether that during those days also they continued this prostaglandin infusion, it's not clear from this. Anyway, some intervention was done. What are the usual interventions which you will be doing in the first newborn days? Commonest of this thing is the bladoptosis, this balloon arterial septostomy is the one thing. Most likely, other interventions also in both the way, both the sides, increase the prostate, something, or the stenting. Lot of interventions are possible. Some intervention we don't know what exactly was done. So stenotic situation, that can be stenting or dilatation, or be a situation, balloon arterial septostomy. Either of this thing was done, out of which, as the intervention was done on the 12th day, I'll think more likely it is a stenosis dilatation which happened. Anyway, after that, child comparatively was better, but the cyanosis persisted. And one very important thing, if it was an intervention from a TGA done with a balloon arterial septostomy, definitely the child will be taken up for the final correction. There was enough time for the final correction of getting surgery somewhere around 3rd week up to 4th week. So it was not done. So that argues against the possibility, even though commonest of the possibilities of the worst cyanosis in the newborn period is TGA. It's less likely. So more chances of some other intervention. What are the interventions we done? Stenosis widening by stent or something. Other interventions, banding of the pulmonary arteries in the case of an increased flow rate. These are those 2 interventions. Anyway, after that intervention, the child went well up to 5 months and a corrective surgery was done. So one very important point, he was put on aspirin during that period. So when will you put the patient on aspirin? Aspirin will be put when a shunt or some other synthetic thing is there. So that is another possibility. You don't know whether it is a stenosis dilatation or a possibility of a VT shunt. Simple seat, the stenosis dilatation or a stent positioning, aspirin is unlikely to be put. So there is a possibility of a VT shunt put. It's a little bit early. That's why we are doubting a patient, a VT shunt being done on the 12th or 13th day. So nowadays, I think it can be done in an early situation also. As the patient was put on aspirin from that period onwards, I feel some of these interventions, either in the form of a VT shunt, was done. And the final surgery was done at 5 months. So these points are arguing more and more for the possibility of a decreased prostate, for which initial VT shunt as a palliative measure and later correction was done. I presume those are the events. It may be something different. But next period following that was the doubtful thing. So we all expect very good outcome in such a situation where patient was sent to an institution the right time, intervention was done, which is possible in the first few days, and the final surgery, you expect a very good outcome. If it was a fallow situation, full correction, medial sternotomy done, open heart surgery, we expect a good outcome. But that didn't happen. The child remained cyanotic after that also. So when this is the role of a pediatrician, when after the surgery, we will be sending back to the pediatrician. It's our role, starts from there in the form of you are responsible for monitoring the growth, development, and the cardiac symptomatology, and to detect any emergency problems happening in a child, and the right referral are all our responsibilities. So presuming that intervention is definitely a cardiac surgery, I feel it's maybe a trial with a complete correction. What all situations the incompleteness of the intervention can happen? Maybe at the time of opening, there was a much complicated cardiac problem and the full correction was not done. That's one possibility. Another possibility, after the intervention, some complications happened later. So what are the complications which can happen following the surgery? You all know the components of the different congenital heart disease. You will be addressing each of them. For example, fallow will be closing the VSD. You will be clearing the outlet oxygen part, and maybe an associated ASD left behind, leading to a shunt. Maybe at the time of your intervention with the valvular manipulation, a recurrent regurgitation can, a part of the stenosis remain. So that means after the surgery also, some of the residual problems remain. That is, it can occur in any of these interventions. Let it be fallow, let it be some other interventions, some other conditions. And on the follow-up, you can develop all sorts of complications in the form of arrhythmia, in the form of a regurgitation worsening, in the form of an endocarditis. And if the cyanosis is persisting or worsening, all the complications which you expect in a non-interventional cardiac problem, also polycythemia related problems. So these are all possibilities. I don't know what exactly happened after this thing. Definitely, it was not a good outcome after the intervention. So when we hear the history forward, for a pediatrician, he was not growing well. He was underweight, lots of nutritional problems. I mean, lagging in the measurement part is there. And the most noticeable thing is he started developing polycythemia. So that's the most important thing. Here, the polycythemia is persisting and worsening after the surgery. So what may be the reason of this thing? The initial surgery gave some relief of the basic problem of decreased pulmonary flow to some extent. But on follow-up, there is worsening of this problem. If it was following a palliative surgery and before the final surgery, you would have considered the block of the shunt. Here it is happening and worsening after the final surgery. That means whatever decrease of flow alleviation you have done didn't work and it is worsening. The stenotic part of the pulmonary thing is worsening. So these are all possibilities which you consider at this stage here in the history. The rest of things which will be helpful at the time of your management is all the other aspects which you have considered, the socioeconomic part. So I'm generally putting what are the roles of a pediatrician when before you send or before you manage the case before this intervention. In the periphery, there are a lot of responsibilities. And suppose another pediatrician working with the cardiothoracic team, the responsibility is different. And of course, I said, following the intervention, when the patient is sent to you, to the pediatrician, you are responsible. There are 3 stages in which pediatrician has got a definitive role. The cardiologist and the cardiothoracic team will be involved for the assessment and the management part. Before and after is our role. So our role, when we hear the history, is to ensure everything, to find out the reason. Is there a possibility of a genetic problem? Is there a possibility of a symptomic situation? You are the person responsible to address the genetic counseling, the chances of occurring later. And you are responsible to assess the socioeconomic background. You are responsible to make the child fit for the surgery. Immunization, right time, right things, including hepatitis B, prevention of pneumonia, maybe influenza vaccines, all sort of things which should be anticipated and correction. So each of the category of the history part is relevant as a pediatrician when we prepare the child to hand over to the team of a cardiac team. Immunization part, feeding part, nutrition. So this is a cyanotic heart disease. Suppose it's another situation. The cyanotic heart disease, what type of cyanotic heart disease it is? This doesn't seem to be the major group of increased phosphate is unlikely. From what is obvious, it's the most likely to be decreased phosphate. So suppose it's an increased phosphate, more likely you will be facing more of problem of congestive failure, recurrent pneumonia. So the management will be much more role for a pediatrician is there. You have to tackle the nutritional part, how to improve the nutrition by increasing the calorie, more frequent feeds. That's a pediatrician's role is more there in the congestive failure, increased phosphate and cyanotic heart disease. Here, it seems more likely to be a cyanotic heart disease per se, most likely to be decreased phosphate situation, where this congestive failure tackling is not much. Still, your role is to tackle the problems as a pediatrician, which can happen to this child during the follow-up till you hand over. So, what are the problems? You are responsible for ensuring that he is on some of the drugs put on by the cardiologist, like the preventers of cyanotic spell, the prevention of anemia, which may be masked, and the frequent follow-up during this period are our responsibilities. Suppose that is a primary pediatrician's role. Suppose you are working in a cardiology with the cardiology team. At the time of the discussion, again, your role is there before taking up. You are supposed to ensure this health, his fitness, endocarditis part, focus of infection and infestations, other skin lesions, eosinophilia. A lot of medical entities need to be ruled out, and your responsibility to hand over the child fit enough to for the intervention. So that's our role. And maybe for the same pediatrician in a tertiary level intervention hospital, once the surgery is over, the child is handed over to you and you're part of the intensive care team. So the problems in the intensive care following an intervention, a lot of them are there. So you're part of the team. You are responsible partly working as a team to detect the immediate post-surgical problem. They're varied. Maybe the distress part, the cyanosis part not responding as it's not proceeding as expected, arrhythmias, a lot of immediate problems are there. So these two situations are for a pediatrician who is more competent, more demanding, more in a tertiary level care. So once he's out, our responsibility starts in the follow-up also. So in short, what is your impression at the end of this thing? Most likely this is a true cyanotic heart disease. Most likely this is a decrease of cyanotic heart disease. And intervention final was done, but it's incomplete. Something is not adequate after the intervention. He's still having problems related to this thing, incompleteness or whatever, we don't know. Anyway, we'll go ahead with the examination part. Anita, you go to the general examination now.
Okay, sir.
Any doubts at this stage, Anita, you have, or any other person? Just one or two doubts here? No, okay, you proceed.
On examination, the child is alert and he was playful, but he seems a little less cooperative during the physical examination. There was no pallor, no icterus, uniform central cyanosis was present, and pan-digital clubbing was present, grade 2. No edema. Cyanosis and clubbing. Vitals pulse rate was 104 per minute.
So pallor, there is no need for mention because we don't expect a pallor. You see, the second thing is child is having clubbing and pallor. Is the child distress or not?
Sir, the child is playing comfortably, but on close examination, the respiratory rate was high and mild increase in worker breathing during the activity was noted.
So this is the point which is relevant, whether you're approaching the child following surgery or intervention or before this thing. Is this distress accountable to the cyanosis? That's the thing. Hello, Anita.
sir, കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ട് sir.
Is this distress enough to produce this cyanosis? So
No,
because there are two possibilities in this case. This is a pure cardiac problem. Respiratory problem didn't contribute to any extent for the cyanosis is one possibility. But in this case, there is another possibility of there can be a congestive failure situation also in the case contributing to the distress. Both can occur in this situation because there are a lot of situations where a decreased flow state cardiac problem. So for a cardiac, the cyanotic heart disease, your task is to answer step by step. Is it a respiratory? No. Is it cardiac? Is it decreased flow or increased flow? It's decreased or increased is decided. And then second and next step on the either side, you go stepwise. Okay. Here there is a congestive failure situation. Will be considering increased flow. If a decreased flow, no congestive failure. This is a case of decreased flow, but there are certain situations where this group of children on the follow-up sometimes develop congestive failure. A decreased flow side, developing congestive failure later also is possible because of different reasons. One thing is severe anemia situation, and two situations very important: a patient coming acutely sick and congestive failure in a fallow, where you get aortic regurgitation, patient can come in the ICU. So fallow with aortic regurgitation is one important thing. And in any of these situations, there can be infective endocarditis. Patient can go in for a failure. So in this situation, patient had some intervention. We don't know whether the intervention is left with some problem of a regurgitation or something where congestive failure also is coexisting. So that's the reason why we are asking how much was the work of breathing and distress. So the cyanosis, if it is not, this work of breathing is not significant, you can very well explain this thing due to the cyanosis part only. Out of proportion dyspnea is you need to consider the respiratory problem as such responsible for the cyanosis, or is the patient having an additional problem contributing? There is a congestive failure also. So that's the reason why. What is the respiratory rate? Is the work of breathing significant? That's point important. So you think it's a mild distress only? It cannot explain these. Okay.
Pulse rate was 104, normal, volume and character. All peripheral pulses were felt equally. There was no radiofemoral delay. Bilateral femorals were equally felt. Blood pressure.
So I think from this point onwards we'll go with the discussion. So in this context, what are the relevance of the pulses? What are the relevance of all this? You said all the 20 fingers are clubbed and cynos. That's an important thing in the general examination. That gives a clue towards the type of the cardiac problem. And that's not in this case relevant, but some other case this is relevant in a certain type of cardiac problem. This differential cyanosis, whether the upper extremity or the lower extremity involved in the cyanosis and clubbing is important. Here, that's importance is whether there's a difference between the upper right and left sides. Again, when you see the pulse, that is the importance. You said all the peripheral pulses are equally felt. So what is the importance of this thing? Going back to the history.
So there was one procedure done in this child.
Yes. So we were assuming, I didn't know anything about the case, and I was assuming that the first procedure done was VT shunt. So in that situation, I expect there's some difference at least between the radial. So you're saying that it's equal.
Equal.
So, equal. Okay, that is one thing. And the importance of the pulse volume, anything in the pulse volume?
Yes, sir. The procedure can have a high volume pulse also.
How?
in cases of if we are keeping the PDA open, then there would be a high volume pulse.
Is there any procedure to keep the PDA open for any of the surgery?
So PDA stenting, PDA stenting.
PDA stenting done as a palliative measure.
Yes, sir.
So you think the PDA stenting was the procedure done after an open heart surgery at 5 months? Very unlikely.
No, sir. No, sir.
So you may keep the PDAs open initially medical, maybe keeping it for stent to buy some time for the final procedure. Nobody will do this stenting of the PDA following an open heart surgery. Very unlikely.
Yes, sir.
So when will you get a high volume in a case of decreased flow state or in a cyanotic heart disease? That's my question. So the role of the pulse, the examination and the volume is less in the case of cyanotic heart disease. More of the values are for the right-sided events in most of the congenital cyanotic heart disease. The role of your pulse, rate, rhythm, volume is only in few cases. You know, the rate rhythm can be altered. There's some clue in the case of a PAT occurring in the case of Epstein's. And very few situations like persistent truncus, you will get a high volume. Yes. Otherwise, maybe with the PDA or a MAPCAS, you may get a little high volume of the pulse. And very, very important thing, acute worsen situation, AR, very high volume in a sick child, very worse situation, not like this child. So here again, you are getting a clue of the radio-radial difference. In this case, it's not the volume is normal. And one more very important reason, infective endocarditis is happening. About you are referring to the intervention leading on to the problem. Where is the intervention done? The pulse volume and the systemic evidence, the pulse and BP are all happening when somebody is tampering on the left side. When somebody is doing a corrective procedure on the right side, you won't get a change in the pulse volume. So what you will be getting when you're tampering or the manipulation of these things, corrective steps are done on the right side, pulmonary system, either stenosis or regurgitation, that won't be reflected in the systemic pulse volume or a BP. But of course, there can be a rhythm disturbance because it can lead to various sorts of arrhythmias. When you're opening, if it was a fallow RV is open, there can be a possibility of arrhythmias. It's an RBBP usually, it won't be reflected in the rate or rhythm, but other arrhythmias also possible when you're tampering this thing. So rhythm is important. Volume indicates some of the selective things. The following the procedure very unlikely to lead to volume, pulse volume change. In this case, pulse volume is normal. And what is the other very important thing which you forgot to mention the pulse? You only told the polycythemia was worsening and the patient was admitted at the end of this thing for partial exchange and all. What are you worried about? Thrombosis. Thrombosis, and you are supposed to look for the vessel block, all the vessels more important. So all the peripheral vessels need to be checked for the volume and maybe Doppler, maybe your Brui, all the other things to evaluate the peripheral vessels are important. And that's relevant when you're suspecting endocarditis, when you're getting arrhythmia, and when in such a situation of polycythemia, all the peripheral vessels monitoring is very important. Okay, go ahead.
The saturation, right upper limb saturation 66%, left upper limb 73, right lower limb 84, and left lower limb 86.
So there is a disparity of saturation between the right and left upper limb.
Upper limbs.
Okay, right upper limb is having a low saturation, left upper limb is having a little higher saturation. Difference between this thing and lower part still higher saturation. So that's an interesting thing. So when you are getting a documented saturation difference between the upper and lower limb, so just when you are analyzing any cardiac problem, this becomes more and more interesting. So following a surgery intervention, you are getting a situation like this. I don't know whether I'll be able to give a final diagnosis or anything. Just we'll move on with the analysis part. This is an interesting thing. when you are getting a saturation difference between the upper and lower limb or difference between the two sides, how will you approach? The hemodynamics is to be considered and in any of the conditions when you evaluate the murmur part or the volume part of this thing. So hemodynamics based on different physical findings, the volume of this thing, the great vessels or the pulse volume, then the chamber enlargement, JVP, everything will be helping in the hemodynamics. Here, saturation between the right and the left. So there is a gradual improvement of the saturation as you go down. So how can this happen? How can this happen? A saturation improving as you go down, right upper limb is, how can this happen? An oxygenated blood is entering through the ductus to the systemic circulation. Then only this can happen. So it's overall saturation happening at the time of ejection into the aorta is low. So from the left ventricle, whether it's the aorta is a systemic great vessels is originating from the left or right, whatever you don't know, the oxygenated blood at the end is somewhere 66. It's delivered to the aorta and it goes to the right sided artery with a concentration of 66. And after the entry into that rate, that is increasing at the left upper limb, and it's more. That means through the PDA, oxygenated blood is coming and joining. It is just the reverse of what you get in a case of the reversal in a case of you all know the PDA reversal, the differential cyanosis. It's just the opposite. So, what are the usual situations where this can happen? Interesting hemodynamics. So, ductus should be carrying an oxygenated blood from one source, and it is definitely entering to the aorta at the point where subclavian is originating. You know, where is the subclavian in relation with the great artery? Aortic arch, the right side brachiocephalic trunk, and it goes to this right subclavian at the upper part. Next, the left carotid. Next to the subclavian, then it goes down. The PDA is entering immediately opposite the subclavian. If there is an oxygenated blood entering, part of it can enter into the left subclavian. The very same way, you will get a little bit of cyanosis in a case of different cyanosis. It's not a cyanosis of the lower limb only. There can be a little bit of cyanosis in the left upper limb because something called streaming. The desaturated blood, in the case of PDA with pH, entering into the aorta, it goes down to the lower limb, but a little bit of it goes into the left subclavian also. Just like oil enters in your rainwater, it goes, and just like that part of it enters. Maybe cyanosis you can get in the thumb and index finger. That's called streaming. The very same way, the oxygenated blood received from the PDA into the aorta is entering into the left subclavian. So you're getting a little bit of oxygenated blood in the left subclavian, more goes down. So it's one thing is clear. There is an patent thing, whether it is artificially created or ductus. Most likely it's a ductus itself because the location which described most likely ductus itself. There is a patent ductus through which the oxygenated blood is entering the definite. So classical situation which is happening in this thing is the situation of a TGA situation where what is that?
PDA will be open.
PDA will be open, TGA, and a little bit of stenosis, quiet also. So that's a classical situation where you get the reverse of the situation where the better oxygenation in the lower part and upper part is less oxygenated because oxygenated blood is being supplied more to the lower part. That's the classical. Maybe it turns out to be something. Okay. The definite thing, it's a hard finding, no doubt about it. You can rely on this one because this is a very, very useful finding. I am interested to know about the grade of the cyanosis you clinically notice the clubbing grade between the upper and lower limbs and between the upper and right and left upper. Is there any difference between this?
So clubbing is more prominent in the upper limb than lower limb.
Yeah, right. And is there a difference between the right and left index and thumb finger?
That was not noticed. It was similar.
Okay, right. You proceed.
So then anthropometry. According to the anthropometry, the child is having grade 1 malnutrition and grade 2 stunting. There is no wasting. So there could be a chronic malnutrition.
Okay, that's enough. Child is having a chronic malnutrition. Is there any dysmorphism? Is there any stigmata suggesting of the genetic problem or an intrauterine infection or any clue towards the basic condition? That's important because in this case, there were 2 deaths, even though it happened in the second trimester, unlikely. Still, in situation where you get fetal loss in the family, you need to consider the possibility of a genetic element. So all the dysmorphism, whether it is fitting with the non-syndrome or any other reason for the malformation also to be thought of. So is there anything?
No, sir, there is no dysmorphism.
Okay.
Then development assessment, as mentioned in the development history, there is development delay, gross motor, fine motor, and social and adaptive.
So what is your inference as a pediatrician? How will you approach this one? How will you give importance to this one?
So there is a global development delay.
So that is one very important thing. That's a clue towards the basic condition.
Condition.
When you get a cardiac condition, especially left-right shunt or something, that will affect definitely the gross motor part, the social development, language, everything will be spared. When you're getting more than one field affected, that argues for underlying problems, genetic or something which may be contributing these things. One. Another situation which can rarely happen is a decreased prostate with the frequent cyanotic spell, hospitalization, some other brain abscess, something which damages the brain, that can be an association. In this case, there was nothing to account for that. No spell so far. Still, he is having affection of the social and language. So that is an indirect clue that this problem represents a part of a genetic or it's even though you don't have other thing, it should be bulked up in that time. Okay.
Then, so head to foot examination, there is no dysmorphism. There is a frontal bossing, but no other features of rickets, no features of infective endocarditis. Hair and nails are normal except for clubbing. Median sternotomy scar is present. There are prominent neck veins.
So what are the general examination point? This again is a pediatrician's role. What are the things, responsibility of a pediatrician? You're supposed to look for all the pediatric part also in the general examination. Your assessment of the growth, your assessment of the development is complete. But the other things which can happen, like your infections, especially ear, you have to be careful about the caries teeth part and other micronutrient deficiency and polycythemia related problems are important, and rarely these other things like okay, these are the main things in the general exam. Okay, infective endocarditis, but okay, bleeding manifestations also can happen in the case of this polycythemia. Even though thrombosis is the most important, there can be changes in the bleeding tendency also sometimes can occur. Okay, go ahead with the cardiovascular section.
System examination, cardiovascular system. There is no precordial bulge.
What about the BP part? BP, you are supposed to measure the whole 4 limbs.
Yes, sir.
There is a 94/60, it's almost normal. There is not much of difference between the 2 upper limbs. The lower limb, a little on the higher, that's acceptable, a little on the higher side, it's systolic pressure. So it's a normal BP, okay?
Yes, sir.
So that is a very important thing. If you are considering the possibility of a TGA, PDA, is there a coactation? That is ruled out here.
Pulled out with the B.
This thing. So what are the things to be looked for when you are suspecting a coactation? BP and pulse volume and BP is important. What are the clues? Even when you are getting a systolic pressure, same. So you expect a little higher systolic pressure with the measurement of Tite method, you expect a BP 10 millimeters higher. If it is equal, also is a clue that there may be a mild fire. In this case, it's not that, it's normal. Okay. Respiratory rate is a little on the higher side. Okay. JVP?
System exam. JVP is, sir, it is at 4 centimeter, but there is seen prominently.
That's not enough about the JVP. Questions, is it raised? Significant. How much is it raised? A second thing, any waves important. That's important because in a case like this, even before the surgery, JVP examination is important. In a newborn baby, the type of cardiac problem will be given clue by the, especially the airways. Tricuspidatory, you know.
Tricuspidatory.
Okay, and sometimes in other situation also you may get a velocitology. Sometimes you get a prominent JVP. These airwaves can be there, but significant airwaves. But in this case, some intervention was done. So that's the reason why you are more interested. Intervention more likely on the right side. So what all ways there can be changes in the JVP? There can be a pulmonary valve, the stenosis incomplete, not a remedy. There can be RVH and there can be an airway because of the compliance is less. Hypertrophy of the RV, not decompressed properly. The ASD close but not complete, and the stenosis a little worse, maybe a lead to airway is possible. There can be a TR. There can again be regurgitant wave possible. So the extent of the JVP and the type of waves are also important. Okay. And the other very remote possibility of an arrhythmia leading to a change in the JVP. Complete heart block sometimes leading to episodic wave, giant wave. So there are multiple reasons why which JVP is important. In this case, you got a JVP elevation. You didn't make out which wave it is. Okay. Go to the precord examination.
There are no precordial pulsations, apex beat not visible, surgical
inspection is important. Inspection, you said that it's a median sternotomy. In a case like this, the clue, you get clue from the analysis of the scars. So where is the scar gives a clue. So what palliative surgery was done? So the scar is on the side, right, on the side, on the right side, on the left side, the median sternotomy. These are all very useful things when you are dealing with a case after intervention. Important. So, yeah. And of course, the other chest deformities, the scoliosis part, vectors, this thing, Harrison, all these things are important because Harrison, sulcus, and vectors can change the situs of this thing and you displace the heart. Your finding may be modified. Here, it's a median sternotomy scar. That means that again argue that it was an open heart surgery done. Okay, precordial bulge is the
then apex beat.
Inspection, anything? But where are the areas will you look for? JVP, you said. Suprasternal inspection, two things. Apex, is it visible or not? Epigastric pulsation, suprasternal pulsation, any dilated veins. All these things are mentioned before you proceed. Is there anything positive?
No, sir, no positive. Then palpation, apex beat is palpable, left fourth intercostal space, 0.5 centimeter medial to the midclavicular line. Normal character, there is no left parasternal heat, there is no epigastric pulsation felt, there is no thrill, no palpable second heart sound. Then posterior chest also, there are no pulsations palpable.
So one very, very important point you forgot, in the inspection, always see the back part also. Because when you are suspecting coarctation, at least once you inspect the back in the bending position, that's one thing. Apart from the chest deformities, back also, this one very important. In this case, apex is in the fourth space, that is expected for a below 4-year-old child. It's normal according to you. So, this is very important when you see, when you're examining a cyanotic heart disease child, the apex position is so important. If you are not getting, you should be looking for on the other side also. Don't skip this thing. If it's evident, is it a LV enlargement side? So when you're getting a decreased flow state, is it LV dominant and RV dominant is decided by the position of the apex and the percussion of the right margin. RA and LV in a case of LV dominant situation, and normal apex, no RA situation, and LPSH yes or no situation in case of decreased flow rate. Here you are getting an apex in the normal position. That rules out the possibility of an LV dominant situation. So most likely you are dealing with a case of a decreased flow rate, decreased flow rate of synovial heart disease. It's more likely to be an RV dominant situation, not an LV dominant. So possibility of tricuspid atresia and Epstein's are out. You are not considering that the Epstein's even otherwise. Tricuspid atresia is another very important situation where the cyanosis can be very worse from the early period, but that's a possibility. But that is out now because LV is in the fourth space on. Okay.
So then auscultation, first
So
heart
you
sound.
have one very, very important thing. You didn't give any importance to the percussion part. You are supposed to percuss the right border. So what are the purpose of your examinations? You are assessing different chambers and vessels. What is about the LV? Where is it and what is the nature? What about the RV? To what extent it is hypertrophy? What about the RA? And what about the vessels? All these things are by your inspection palpation together. So you mentioned only about the LV. What about the RA? So that will be answered only by the percussion. You didn't mention about the LPSH. LPSH did you mention?
Yes, sir, no parasternal.
So RV is not detectably, it's not there.
No.
But LV is not there, RV also you didn't get.
Yes.
So that doesn't mean that you can't say it's not an RV dominant. What are the RV dominant situation where LPSH is not there? You are presuming an RV dominant situation because LV is not enlarged. But you didn't get an LPSH. So how can you say it's an RV dominant situation? Fallow is one situation where you did not get it because it's effectively decompressed.
Yes,
so some way after surgery or maybe it's by this time itself, it's a decompression of this thing. Sometimes it may not be obvious. So you're not moving away from this thing. It's an RV dominant situation even when you're not getting LPSH. So you should have percussed the right border to know whether it's an RA enlargement, especially when you're getting a DVT. Okay.
Yes, sir. Then auscultation, first heart sound is normal. Second heart sound was single and loud. There were no third heart sound or fourth heart sound. There were no ejection click, no pericardial rub. There was no murmur or venous hum. Other areas of chest were also auscultated. There were no murmurs.
So this is one thing, very classical things of a simple paleohistology, what you have mentioned now. So what are the auscultatory things which you will be concentrating? First, second, third, fourth, you said. Which heart sound will you be giving importance in a synovial heart disease? Most important is the second heart sound. Most important, second heart sound evaluation. So whether it is single and loud, is it split? Is what nature it is split and all, very important in a case of synovial heart disease evaluation. So here it's single and loud. What are the possibilities when you're getting a single and loud second heart sound in this context? Single and loud means either one of these things is you're hearing pulmonary or aortic you are hearing. You don't know which one. It can happen when both are the one behind the other. Other situation, when you are getting one sound encroaching onto the other, 1 + 1 together. So all these are examples. When in a case of PGA, one goes behind the other, and even when there is no pulmonary stenosis, you may get a one single sound only because pulmonary is going behind the aorta, aorta is in front. That is one reason. The other one, the pulmonary you are not hearing, but aorta is in front and large, the classical situation of fallow. The other situation, the PH, the P2, loud, encroaches onto the A2 and becomes loud. So in this case, you are not suspecting a possibility of an pH situation, worsen situation happening in this case. So it's not a situation of an acquired greater worsening. So in this case, the possibilities are the situation of a fallow one. Second possibility equally I'll consider, because I'm giving too much importance to the saturation difference between these ones. I'm considering the possibility of a fallow-like situation, not a classic fallow. I don't expect in a case of fallow the oxygenation more in the, and the PDA oxygenation is improving in the lower part. So I'm suspecting the possibility of a fallow-like situation where there is something wrong in the great arteries. Okay, you go ahead with this thing, and in any case, you need to auscultate more. You're giving importance of the sound, so important, single loud sound. And you are supposed to mention about the click, very important. Click is one arguing for the severity. When you are getting a click that originates from the aorta, usually that argues for a severe fallow. Sometimes it can occur in a fallow due to pulmonary valvular level. 50% of the cases of fallow, you occur the outlet obstruction at the infundibula, and maybe 20% of the valvular, where you can get a click at the valvular also. So the severe situation of fallow, you can get the click mostly due to aortic click, sometimes due to the valvular pulmonary. So click is very important in the evaluation of the fallow. And what is more important is the evaluation of the murmur, this murmur, other murmur. Which are the murmur? No murmur or venous sound. That's a very, very important thing. What do you expect in a case like this? What should be looking for? In a case like this, you expect, and I expected some murmur. I was expecting a very severe or a stenotic outlet obstruction. I was expecting an ejection systolic murmur. You said that it's not there. What does that mean? It may be a very, very severe tight stenosis or an atresia-like situation. So outlet, there is no flow happening from the RV to the pulmonary. No sound. Very critical, very severe stenosis or a situation of an atresia. That's why you are not getting any flow across the same. And is the flow happening through the ductus? In that situation, if that is a situation, what I should be expecting? The desaturated blood from the RV should be taking the PDA path to be down, and I expect the saturation to be low. So that's not happening. So it's not a situation of fallow with pulmonary atresia and critical fallow also. So what is it? So through the PDA, oxygenated blood is entering, and there is no murmur here. So I feel oxygenated blood is entering the right side to be pumped through the pulmonary artery, entering through the ductus, through the going down, and the subclavian is there. So oxygenated blood is there in the RV, unlike what you expect in a fallow. RV it's a common chamber where there is mixing, or in the RV there is oxygenated blood entering. That can happen when the intervention was the mustard and sending operation. There can be which is one of the surgical interventions which is done after the surgery was not done early, and then later mustard sending operation will lead to a change in the drainage from the pulmonary to the right and the systemic to the left. So if that is a situation, the RV will be carrying the oxygenated blood, and maybe this can happen. I don't know what exactly. These are all postulations based on the finding. I was just assuming. You go ahead. Okay, we'll just see the.
Sir, other systems were normal.
Okay.
Other than the respiratory rate.
So in this case, always you should be auscultating for any continuous murmur in the other areas.
Yes, sir.
Did you auscultate for the continuous murmur anywhere?
Yes, sir. No. It was not there.
Not there. You should be auscultating here on the right side, on the back. Okay.
Also.
Okay, go to the other systems are normal. Liver is not endowed. Liver is palpate on the right side or left side or mid. That's also important.
Important. Right side only, no
Right
enlargement.
side. So situs was normal. LV was there in this thing. I don't know. It's a major complicated heart disease, and the surgery was not perfect. That's what I can guess from this one. Okay, go ahead with the investigation. We'll go to the X-ray.
Yes, sir.
The other things are not important. Oh, X-ray. Okay. What is the
This is
X-ray like? So we have skipped the other
newborn
investigation. Newborn X-ray. Newborn X-ray. What is it? Obvious. The right side liver is the situs is normal. And when you are evaluating this X-ray systematically, you should be checking the bony cages also. Number of ribs, the vertebral things are also important. Position is okay. Somewhat inspiratory feeling, okay. And what is obvious is the lung expanded, but a little bit oligemic lung. The mediastinum is not narrow, wide. So that is one point against your TGA possibility. TGA, I would expect the other thing. The boot-shaped heart with an RV counter is there. So RV counter is there, oligemia is there, and the TGA is not there. In this situation, I'll go for the fallow cytology itself. As a fallow is the commonest, sometimes it can occur in the newborn period also. With this thing, even though that's not a common, I think I'll consider decreased prostate, fallow or fallow-like state, and the TG is a little less likely. Go ahead with other next X-rays.
Sir, further X-rays
after surgery, didn't take X-ray?
No, sir. It's not available with them. It's at the surgery.
Okay. When was this ECG taken? Newborn period or now? After surgery.
This is newborn ECG.
Okay. Go to the this one. This one is the first X-ray. ECG. Okay. This is a newborn. Which day is it? Which day?
Before surgery, sir.
Which month? Which day? That's important because when you are getting a cyanoid heart disease in the newborn, if it is happen, ECG is taken in the first few days, 3 days, 72 hours. That's important. So which day it was taken?
Sir, around second week of life.
Okay, right. Okay. So what are the findings have we seen here? It's all narrow complex, regular complex. Overall, the seeing lead one, you should go to lead one first set. Okay. Overall, it's a narrow complex are seen, regularly spaced narrow complex are seen, and lead to, what is the lead to P waves? It's not obvious. That's why P waves here. Okay. Regular P waves are here. Lead to, this is a T wave, P wave. This is the P wave. P wave is small. It's right atrial enlargement is not there. It's widened also. Both right and left atrial enlargement evidence is not there. Okay, PR interval is okay. Go to the lead one. Lead one. Okay. The significant Q wave is a little bit significant. Narrow complex. Lead one Q wave on the 2 weeks. Okay. P wave is here. Here P wave is there. Normal. P wave relation is normal. Okay. Lead one tall R waves are the AVR. Okay, go to the other. AVL is showing a negative deflection. Okay. Rate is somehow, what is the rate now? 150. Okay, got a 150 almost. Okay. P wave relation is the AVF is positive. Okay, go to the other. Lead one AVF is positive. Lead one showed a positive. Okay, lead one showed a positive thing. AVF showed a positive. Where is the axis now? The usual 0 to 90. Okay, which is the equiphasic lead? What limb leads? Which is the equiphasic small way? Go back. Equiphasic. AVL. Okay, it is somewhere in the left axis itself 60 or so. I think axis in the normal usual quadrant somewhere in the. It is not a right axis. You expect a right axis in that age group, but you are getting an axis on the left side. So it's around 60, I think. 0 to 90 AVL negative situation, and AVL is the smallest equibasic where you are getting a negative situation. Then it will be 60 plus 60, 80. Definitely, it may be in the normal range also. You expect a axis of 110 onwards, and you are getting somewhere in this quadrant, the left quadrant, 80 or so, a little leftward, but you can't say it's a left axis. But it's not a right axis, which you expect in the case of a decreased flow state RV dominant fallow-like situation. This is not an ECG supporting. Okay, go to the chest leads. V1, what is the importance of V1, V2? Here, V1, I can't make out the QRS amplitude. It's a, is it tall? Better ECG, Sada?
Yes, sir, it's a tall.
Tall, how much is it? It's not, this one, okay. Very tall RV, okay. A little peaked P wave and very tall RV. So, significant RV enlargement is there, because that the voltage itself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, significant RV, no doubt about the RV dominant situation. RV dominant situation, axis only is a, if you're taking it's a lead 1, maybe mistaken. And here is a very important situation. Is there an early transition? Early transition, you go to V1, V2, go to the V3. V3. So when you check the early transition, because you are suspecting a fallow, sometimes it can happen between V3R, V4R, and V1. Here it is no need for this thing, because V1 itself is a RV, tall RV. Where is it happening? It's not happening. Its early transition is not there. Okay. It's go to the V4. It's uniformly positive. Its transition is not happening. V4, V5, V6.
So V5, V6. Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Disconnect ആയിപ്പോയതാണ്.
Hello, sir. Ipo keka, sir.
Okay. And then ECG, when you're getting a uniform pattern like this, always you check for the Q wave, because a fallow-like situation is the single ventricle with the PS also. That's also a possibility. Anyway, it's fitting with a, it's a fallow. Otherwise, the not only thing is about the axis. RV dominant situation again, but no early transition. RV right axis you can't say. Not much. Anyway, range of right axis is starting from maybe 70 to 70 or 60 to 110 also can be taken as the normal axis. It's a normal axis. Okay. Okay. Go to the next slide. What's your final diagnosis? I don't know the diagnosis anyway. Now your diagnosis. Your sound is not clear. Talk loud.
Hello, sir. Kekama.
ഇല്ല കേൾക്കണില്ല. അനീറ്റ കേൾക്കണില്ല.
Hello, sir.
Okay, now you can hear. Okay.
Cyanotic congenital heart disease with decreased pulmonary blood flow, possibly tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary atresia. This child presently in normal sinus rhythm, no evidence of infective endocarditis or congestive cardiac failure, immunized for age, global development delay, grade 1 malnutrition and grade 2 stunting.
That was your provisional diagnosis or echo proved?
This was my provisional diagnosis. Echo, I have attached the echo, sir. Shall I show?
Okay. Did they do any intervention during the fifth month for this thing? What was the intervention done?
Fifth month, they did a bidirectional Glenn shunt.
Oh. So it was
First,
not
they did
possible
a PDA stent.
for the correction. When will you do the
Correction.
bidirectional Glenn shunt? When nothing can be done to improve the pulmonary circulation. See, so what are the situations? There are a lot of situations where you give this sort of palliative procedure to improve the pulmonary circulation. Pulmonary circulation is affected by different situations of the pulmonary atresia. One, it can be very severe situation of the pulmonary arterial segment totally unfavorable for surgery, or outlet only, the whole ventricle can be affected. Many situations where there is no access for the deoxygenated blood to enter into the lung. So different methods of improving the pulmonary circulation, out of which one thing is a Glenn shunt, other thing is the various types of Fontans and the cardiopulmonary isolation. These are all different types of surgical. We are not discussing anything about all those surgical interventions. If time permits, or if you get another case discussion, we'll discuss all those things. So here, it's a surgery done to improve the pulmonary circulation, because the conventional surgery of the pylorocharacter is not possible. So Glenn shunt was done. And why is this child now worsening? The Glenn is not working over time. All these the cardiopulmonary isolation, Fontan, everything are not having a very good long-term outcome. So that can lead to worsening of the cyanosis. That explain the situation now also. So what to do with this child to improve the pulmonary circulation is difficult. Okay. So situs altis, but you read out, Anita.
Yes, sir. So the first echo showed cyanotic congenital heart disease with pulmonary atresia, confluent pulmonary artery, AST with left to right flow, large VST with 50% aortic override, and a PDA of 4 millimeter.
So it's a fallow pulmonary atresia type.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think we'll stop here. We have promised to stop early at 5 o'clock. It's already we have exceeded 22 minutes. Can we have a few minutes of discussion, or 5 minutes or so?
Yes, sir.